Hello, and welcome back to SecFlux, the podcast, Webcast.
That was an interesting intro. You almost sounded like you were inhaling helium.
I know, it was great. It is a Friday. I'm in a great mood. I'm Stacy, one of your hosts, and this is Joe, because I know he won't introduce himself. And as a normal thing that I'm going to be trying to do now, I'm going to start this out by asking you a question.
Okay.
How do you
Ask
like
away.
that? Yeah, I will. I don't need permission. I'm just going to ask. Have you ever had something that you bought and you enjoyed for a really long time and it either got discontinued, disappeared, or the price just it became unobtainable at some point?
I had this issue with Costco. So
Really?
I find something in Costco I like to eat,
Uh-huh.
so watching my macros, working out, and all that stuff, that's been my life for a long time. And we shop at Costco because, well, it's just convenient. And I find something like oatmeal or like burrito bowl.
Oh, like that disgusting oatmeal you had that one time. Ugh.
No, this is different. This is different
It's
oatmeal.
a different disgusting oatmeal. Okay.
Or a burrito bowl, right?
Yeah.
And they disappear, and I'm like, well, now I've got to readjust. But yeah,
I have
yeah.
to
To answer
do.
your question, yes, and a
I
lot of my
had
friends.
Oh, go
What? Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you
No,
first. No,
I
you.
exist.
I was interrupting, but okay. I have this happen a lot, especially with, consumables like you're talking about, whether it's food, clothes, somewhat consumable to a point. And makeup. Makeup's a huge one. Like there's a makeup palette that I like. I don't even wear makeup that much, but then it gets discontinued and I'm like, "Great. The thing I found that actually works on my face and doesn't cause me to break out or like have a sty or something is now gone and I cannot enjoy it any longer." Well, let's get into the tech side of this. Have
Funny you
you
should bring that up. I have a lot of disgruntled friends right now.
I was gonna say, have you heard of a little tiny itty bitty company called VMware?
You mean Broadcom?
Yes, I do. Blasphemy, but yes, I do mean Broadcom now. Um, so to explain for those who don't know, and if you're listening to this, you probably do. VMware, a long-standing virtualization company, was bought out by a company called Broadcom, and I think it was to the tune of like 69 billion. Nice. But the problem here is VMware is a type of technology or solution that many, 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 many customers use to virtualize their environments, right? And Broadcom was like, hey, you know what's a really good idea? We were going to take this company, VMware. Everyone loves it. Like it's the darling, right? A lot of people use it. A lot of people advocate for it. It's helped many, many consumers and customers. And they're like, what if we just take that all away and we smash all of your hopes and dreams and then we can skyrocket the price by 10 times? And that's reality. That's what's happening.
But it makes no sense to me. But I'm not a business person, right? So I'm just maybe I'm talking out slot A, right? Because maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. However, that being said, working as a CISO from a bank and a bank that expands by acquisition, when they bought a new bank, the bank would typically pay itself off within 3 to 5 years. Now, I'm wondering if you spend billions of dollars on a company and then you raise your prices and price people out of the market, how long do you expect your payoff? Yeah, your acquisition to pay for itself. If you do that, take that approach.
I see, and this is the thing. This is me speculating, right? The only way I can see this as or here, let me kind of do a little and I'll reverse because I don't think that it's about that. I don't think that it's about like continuing the business. I think it's more of like a cash grab now. And that's the only way I can really explain it. That it doesn't make actual true business sense in the sense of if you think of business being, you know, providing a solution or support to your customers, it's not that at all. This is literally just how much money can we make and how fast and how can we get away with doing this? That's what
That's a
it feels
problem.
like. Yeah, that's a problem.
We've seen similar things happen with other organizations too, not just VMware. But before we talk about that, what if I'm using VMware, which I don't, my lab doesn't run on VMware. I have a lab that runs in
Ours
Parallels
does.
on my Mac, which suits me just fine. So I'm really unaffected by this overall.
We are.
So where do you go from here?
I don't know. See, that's the hard part. There are a couple of other solutions, right? Like there's some open source ones. You could use something like VirtualBox, but that's a lot harder to scale. It doesn't have the same shiny, good interface that VMware does because we use vSphere here at our home. So we do have an enterprise grade network here at home and we virtualize a lot of it. So we use like the VMs to do things like, run Active Directory or run different components of our network as if it was an enterprise network. So now we have all of these VMs, scattered across our network to do different tasks or to do different things or to play a role. So now it's like, okay, we're going to have to rip the band-aid off at some point. We're going to have to switch to something else, whether that's moving over and porting to Proxmox or doing something like shifting gears altogether and then containerizing everything. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but the clock is ticking. We're going to have to
Right.
figure it out.
And obviously you have more time to figure this out than, let's say,
A
a
company.
bank
Right.
running VMware, vSphere, vRealize, and that are migrating VMs and custom firewall rules to integrate with VMware. And all of a sudden, you have all this. What you are paying for is, what was the increase? Approximate percentage of increase?
The percentage was like 1,200 or I see 1,250. I'm kind of looking over here at my other monitor, but the times amount was like 10 times. And
So
that's
now
not an
your
exaggeration either.
now your renewal is that much higher, and you're like, no, I'm not going to spend the money on that because it just doesn't make sense. Right now,
Yeah, so we're gonna have
you
to drop it.
we're going to drop it. Where does an enterprise? How do they migrate? How do they move away from this? How would you scale that down to something else?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that at this time because it's like even for myself, I'm like, I don't it's it's one of those things that I'm waiting to address whenever we finally have to do it when it gets down to the wire because we have so much going on. But for an organization, yes, it's of a similar question. Like, how do you operationalize and mobilize your teams to completely tear up something that has deep roots in your infrastructure? And that's the
Right.
problem.
And the irony of all this in my mind is, I recall sitting at a boardroom table or a conference room table with a CTO, the CIO, me being the CISO, and various other support people in IT, and we were like, okay, we're talking about if the shit hits the wall, right? If Checkpoint goes away, if Cisco goes away, if VMware goes away, and I'm sitting there in the back of my mind going, this seems I don't think these aren't going to go away,
That'll
right?
never happen. Blah. Just like similarly, I'm gonna call it, and maybe I've mentioned this. I remember you said whenever we were doing one of those like tabletop exercises or we were planning for one at the bank, you said, what if there was a pandemic? And how
Yeah,
are we going to and I thought to myself very quietly, like in my own head, I didn't externalize it. I was like, a pandemic, really? In this day and age? And then lo and behold, a couple of years later.
right. This is all our fault. We spoke this into existence by trying
Sorry,
to plan for
everyone.
it, right?
Yeah.
But I would
And
have never in my wildest dreams thought that VMware
same.
would be you'd be priced out of it, right?
Yeah, to be priced into obscurity. And that's the thing too. I think, even for myself, we talk about having a contingency plan and having backups all the time. And it's like, here's a moment where I'm caught with my own foot in my mouth or like my pants down, whatever you want to say. It's like, I don't know what to do at this point for
But
myself and for our own situation. Like I have ideas, but it's a matter of actually implementing those ideas and testing them out and, there's so many foreseeable snags that I can picture in my head and moving everything over.
it is a good it's a good example to sit down and think about, okay, now what if my other primary technology vendors get bought up and the price increases by thousands of a percentage or thousands of percents? What do we do then? And start planning that out and have that backup plan ready. I think this is a good wake up call because I don't think we're going, this is the end of this. I think we're going to see
I
this happen to other vendors.
I felt my stomach turn when you said that because I agree. It's just like, whoop, like it flopped. And I think that's very true. I'm noticing that across different vendors, or even just regular products too. Like we kind of started outside of technology. This is becoming more and more prevalent where we're getting these companies that are trying to make as much money as possible as quickly as possible. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record. And we talked about that a little bit in the last episode and how I built up that case in talking about how the internet in of itself used to be this more, or I should say, less corporate environment, right? Now I feel like everywhere I go on the internet is dedicated to getting some kind of money out of me. And it didn't feel like that before. So I agree. I think that it's only going to get worse because the it's much like and I hate to use this term, but I feel like the state of the internet has been a constant, almost like a land rush, right? It's been a way that these businesses are almost like colonizing things, and that's true of like technology that is internet connected too. We get into a point to where we're using something, and then if the rug's going to be pulled, what do we do?
I think you're right about the internet, but I think that we also saw a land rush in still seeing a land rush in information security. We've had a lot of
Mhm.
information security companies spin up, venture capitalists come in and dump a lot of cash in there. And the problem with that is, and I saw a lot of chatter about this morning, is that dilutes the ownership where the original founder loses control of the company. All of a sudden, the majority shareholders decide they wanted to change the organization some way, go a different direction from a pricing perspective or a product perspective, and now what you started off with isn't what you're going to get in the long run. And we
and
saw, and there's an organization, I won't go name names this morning, but they're having huge layoffs because of that particular situation.
and I think this is, I promise everyone this is not a podcast about layoffs. I know we talk about it a lot. It's just a very, excuse me, I had a hiccup, a very pivotal time in our history that, much like we talked about last time with the dot com bubble, we're having another sort of era of that, I feel. And
Maybe I don't want to get into
maybe,
FUD, right? Because
right.
I don't want to go into to making those predictions, but I see some things changing, and it makes me, stay more alert. I'll say that.
And I agree with that. I'm not saying, oh my gosh, this is happening. It's more of a pattern recognition thing of like, I think we've seen this before. Let's see how it plays out. Let's
Yeah.
see if it's going in the direction we may anticipate it to based on, the historical evidence that we have in prior iterations of similar things. Um, so with with the I've seen a lot of response to Broadcom doing this, and none of it's good. Have you seen anyone try to defend them on this case or
No,
to make a case?
how do you defend that? I mean, in the back of my mind, yes, I know there's some people in a boardroom somewhere
They've got to be.
who are going, "Oh, this is the way to go. We're going to make all this money. We're going to cut these lower paying people out of there. We're just going to focus on enterprises, and then we'll just increase, by 5 or 10% people that are already paying us millions of dollars, and we're going to make all this money back, and it's going to be less work for us." I know somewhere, somehow, that's the conversation that's probably being had.
I tend to agree. So there's got to be some of that. And I always imagine it kind of in a similar vein of like there's a bunch of suits sitting in a boardroom being like, "This is the best idea," and they're all like giving each other a back patting train of like, "Yes, yes, let's enjoy this over some caviar."
It's like the conversations that I'm sure happen in some place. You know what we should do? We should lay off about maybe 5% of our workforce and then spend millions of dollars on a Super Bowl commercial.
Oh my gosh, I hear no evil, I see no evil, and I speak no evil.
That makes you wonder
Oh.
also.
It do. It most certainly do. The way that money is spent in combination with these layoffs is just, I'm sure you can feel my cringe, or my,
Yeah,
expression of this
and
coming
and
through.
I say that from purely an outside perspective. I don't know, but what's the word I'm looking for? Um, from the outside, this doesn't look good. The optics of it all looks very, very bad, right?
It does.
But from a business perspective internally, it may make better sense than what you're able to discern from being outside the organization.
I think it's a glass house sort of thing. Like we do see pretty transparently what's going on, and then we hear something else, and I think that's a really frustrating part of it too. But I won't get into that because that would just be belaboring something that I know we've already discussed. So, in terms of what makes business sense versus what doesn't, as we're seeing more of these incidents happen, what do you think are the outcomes, or what do you think is going to happen here? We were talking about VCs earlier, and I was literally just talking to someone else about a very similar topic of VCs don't care about the product, they don't care about the company, they don't care about the culture. They just it's a horse race. They're putting bets on horses
Mhm.
and they care about essentially what that the market of that solution is. They don't even care about the solution itself or whatever it is. They care about the probability of them making money, which tech, I'm doing the money symbol is really big for them. It always has been.
Yes, I think they created a good niche for SMB, a company to come in and provide an SMB site solution for replacement for VMware. I think there's a good opportunity there. They left a good gap in the market for those that couldn't afford it. Let's say one of the existing products that you mentioned, Proxmox, VirtualBox, or whatever the case may be,
Hyper-V, something else.
Hyper-V
Yeah.
says, "Hey, you know what we should do? We should invest more into making this workable for SMBs, and we would probably make some money on this more than we're making now."
I think so too. Or that's what I hope. Fingers crossed, we're going to have more organizations that will fill that gap. And then VMware is suddenly going to be kind of looking around like, what happened? Why is everybody going away? I don't understand. Like,
Or the case may be, that's what Broadcom's thinking is, "Hey, we'll create this gap in the market." But they may have this product on the back burner that's waiting to fill that gap, going, "Hey,
they
we don't
better
have
not.
VMware, but we have this, which is our replacement for this section of the market." You never know.
Gross. And then it's something like Dameware. Remember that?
Oh yeah, Dameware. Yeah.
I know that's not like a similar product, but I just remember using that and being like, "Oh, this is a mess. How is this considered
Well,
enterprise?"
well, if you're not familiar, well, for the audience, if you're not familiar with Dameware, it's not a virtualization product.
It's
It's
not.
more of a remote desktop, remote support product. That so we had a lot of problems with Dameware.
We
That's
did.
why it's still the taste is bitter in our mouth because a certain endpoint protection, which I won't name because calling it endpoint protection right now is really being generous, kept removing it from our machines as malware.
Yes. They're like, "Oh, a remote tool? Bye." And again, not the same as VMware. I totally understand that, but it was like the quality of the product. It was supposed to be enterprise. It was owned by a larger company that had a lot of other products that were used. And it was one of those things where it's like, oh, well, this is something that we purchased that you can also use if you need that solution. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of these organizations that they try too hard to do a little bit of everything.
Well,
Um,
that's I think yeah. What gets me if you step back and you look at these organizations that start off with a core product, and I'll go back to this endpoint protection provider. They
Yes,
start
that's a
off
perfect one.
with an endpoint protection product, and you get it in your environment, and they go, "Oh, by the way, we do disk encryption. Well, that's good to have. Let's put this disk encryption product in here. And oh, by the way, we do malware sandboxing for downloads. Well, hey, that's an extra layer of protection. Let's put that in there." Now they've created all these different modules, and this buries you deeper and deeper under the tech stack. So if something changes or you become unhappy with it, in order to get out of this, the cost of changing is really burdensome at this point, right? Because now it's so integrated into your environment. And that's what vendors try to do. They
I
try
work at
to
a vendor, they do try to do that, I won't lie.
right? We'll get them
100%.
addicted and buried in all these different products, and then to get out from underneath this is going to cost them a fortune. And a lot of organizations say, "Well, we'll just deal with it."
Yeah, and that's what some of them hope for, because the sales term for that is they call it, like, sticky. It makes you
Yeah.
stickier. And that's the point I was making whenever it came to, we were using that, larger monitoring solution or platform, whatever you would wanna call it, that included Dameware as a component of it. So
You
This
mean that
is
monitoring solution that got breached?
that
That
one.
supply
That's
chain
the one.
breach?
That's the one. Everyone knows the name. I don't need to say it. Their password happens to be, SolarWinds123. You can make whatever guesses you want about who that might be. Um, and, I know that's like a common joke and whatnot, but I digress. The larger conversation here that I think is important too is this exact thing that we're talking about is it's almost like a lot of these organizations or just customers in general will get used to something or they'll, have, as you had said, the tech stack is so deep to where it gets that, again, root system kind of intertwined or entangled in it. And once that happens, what do you do? Right?
Well, I think it's a good point right now to think about your info in your strategic plan for security. To think about this: do I want to invest more in a product I already have for additional features that may bury me further in a tech stack to where the cost of changing ownership or the cost of ownership is too burdensome? Maybe I want to change my strategy for that approach, right?
Mhm.
Maybe going with one vendor. If you go with one vendor, they've got all the power, right?
Exactly.
So if you this argument's been around for a long time. You're going back to, well, if we just use Windows, Mac, and Linux in our environment, we're going to be more secure because we're not using one thing, and their exploits aren't going to be across the building. But it's more difficult to support. It's almost six of one, half a dozen of another, right? But you think about that in your strategy and determine, well, what's our risk, what's our budget, and what's the best approach for us? Because it's not going to be the same for all organizations. So that's something I would be thinking about as I develop my strategic plan for security right now is we need to stop and take a look at this because the reality of the situation we're in is this is happening.
Yeah. I think now, especially since it's a new year for a lot of places, some people end their business year in January, some people do it in February, some in March. I don't know. Calendars work different for different places, I guess. It's not universal. But now is a good time to review that, I feel. To look through the different vendors you have and to start thinking about contingency plans, to start thinking about if XYZ does happen, what's it going to take to get out of this? What's it going to take to rebuild or retool what we have? And is it worth to have these things that this vendor may have talked us into that we didn't otherwise need? Because that happens too, right?
Right. And as you say that, I'm thinking, I know a lot of organizations who are heavily invested in VMware are going to move to a cloud provider of some sort. And you're going to be looking at potentially the same problem there going to a cloud provider. There are talks of Google probably sunsetting GCP, you know, and then
And
what are you going to do
you
if you're in GCP? If you go that route, oh my God, we got to move to Azure and AWS. Now what do we have to do? How much is that going to cost? So
right.
you need to think about all these various perspectives right now because there's a lot going on.
Are these companies are they gonna be there for you? Are they gonna hold your hair back whenever you're throwing up? No. Like they're gonna they're gonna leave whenever you need them the most. And Google's very I showed you the Google graveyard if anyone's familiar with that concept of how many things Google has sunset over the years. It's a lot. Even for myself, I had domains that I purchased through Google because honestly, it was really easy to do. It was one of the most easy domain purchases that I've made, and to make the site following that and to do all of like the different configurations and requirements was so streamlined. And then I get my email saying, "Hey, sorry about you, but we're not doing domains anymore. So I don't know. We're just going to hand it off to this other company. So whatever they say goes." And that's something that I think can happen too. So you'll get into these situations, thinking back from an organization's perspective, what if you have this acquisition and then the terms change for the contract that you have with that company because they're now operating differently or they now have different components in play that doesn't meet your original obligations or expectations of them either. So
Or
with that,
worse.
or worse, go on.
Like, so what if the company you're dealing with sells to another company, and this other company thinks they bought all the virtual or bought the servers, the assets, and all that, but come to find out they were being leased, and no one's paying the leasing the lease on the equipment. No one's making that payment, and the company leasing the equipment goes, "Hey, somebody needs to pay us." Then there's a big argument about, "Hey, who actually is supposed to be paying for this?" And it goes on and on till the leasing company gets a court order to have the servers removed from your data center. And then the application you're using goes offline, and someone has your data on that server, and you don't know who it is.
This sounds really specific, like it's happened to you before.
It didn't happen to me exactly per se, as someone I know.
As
A
someone, yeah,
friend told me about this.
got it, got it. And I when it comes to stuff like this, we talked about a little bit earlier, the vendor has all the power, right? So how do you get back that power under circumstances where they're making these acquisitions and changes? There's got to be something that an organization can do. Maybe, for example, do you remember, again, we're being a little kludgy or like, wishy-washy about naming particular names because it's more about what's happening than the individual organizations that are doing this because they're all doing something similar. At this point, the name is just a variable for most of them. But there was a particular solution we were using at the bank that had experienced a significant breach. And sometimes, under certain circumstances, you can get out of a contract for something like that, right? Like if
Mm.
you have it set up that way. Well, similarly, again, I'm not in contracting, I'm not in legal. I'm just thinking of this from like you're put into a position, you're like, okay, I don't know what to do at this point as a, technology leader. There could be some cases under some circumstances where you could get out of that contract depending on how it was written if they are making changes or they're not operating in the ways that they promised.
Yeah, you'd want to get that baked into the hopefully your legal team gets that baked into the contract, right?
Yes.
That's all. And most of the time, in from my perspective or my experience, if you go, "Hey, you've been breached," I don't have confidence in your ability to provide me this service anymore. If you want to press this issue, we're leaving. But I've had that conversation. Go, yeah, we get it. You're all right. We're not going to force you into the remainder of this contract. They've got some problems, but the organizations that aren't going to do that, they're going to say, "No, you owe us money, and that's what we care about."
Yep. And it's kind of a toss up which one you'll get if you try to go that route in my opinion. Again, it's really contingent on your contract. It's something that you could try. Um but who knows the outcomes. So many my Doctor Strange sort of visions. It's like all the outcomes are like, give us the money.
Yeah, that's what it's about at the end of the day, right? It's profit. It's
It's
not about
all
people. It's not
not about
about
people.
the greater good. It's all about the bottom line. Come on, Stacy.
I know. You figure I would know that by now. And I the only argument I've heard when it comes to, you know, companies providing a premium product where they say something like, "Oh," and it being really expensive, right? We're talking about like astronomically expensive. And then I've heard the defense from, business people saying, "Oh, well, Rolls-Royce is expensive and like that's a premium product and people pay for that." Yeah, but also Rolls-Royce is owned by BMW and they barely make up 1% of their profit, and BMW's most profitable car is like one of their consumer grade cars. So
Yeah,
it's like,
I
who's your audience here
I s-
then?
I saw an interesting breakdown. It was a certain high level Rolls Royce brand compared to a BMW. And this car was essentially the same engine, same chassis, same performance, but considerably cheaper for the BMW brand and not paying the premium for the Rolls Royce logo,
The
right?
tag, yeah. Exactly. And when it comes down to it, if that's going to be an argument that you're making or if that's going to be how you view your customer base, you're not at the end of the day, you're not going to have a lot of customers, and if you're okay with that, like I don't think it's the best solution. I'm going to say that. I think that when it comes to having a technology that is so useful, the way to, build customer trust and better proliferate your own product is to make it affordable. That's my opinion.
But profit, you
Where does
can't
it end? When does it stop? You can't always grow. Like,
think of the children.
think of the children.
They need profit.
What would children do without profit?
Exactly.
I don't know, when I was a kid, I was just fine with eating cheese sandwiches and watching Franklin, the turtle show.
That's sad. I'm sorry.
I don't know, I was digging it. I wanna go back to that. I don't wanna have to worry about stuff like this. I wanna eat my cheese sandwiches and watch my I don't know, I think that was on Nickelodeon or PBS or whatever, watch my face. Oh, those were the
I
days.
Yeah, that I miss that, but
I forget you're old.
I think I was well out of the cartoon watching age at that point.
Whatever, I still watch cartoons. There's no such thing as being out of a cartoon watching
I don't
age.
watch cartoons. I watch anime. There's a difference.
Oh, whatever. Anime is a type of cartoon. Get out.
I have this argument with my kids.
Do they
It's
argue
cartoon.
against it or for it?
No, they're like, no, it's anime. I'm like, it's cartoons. No, it's anime.
It's still cartoon. It's a type of
But I
cartoon.
call it anime also.
I mean, yeah,
I'm
it's
just
good to differentiate, but yeah, I think that's funny. What's your favorite anime?
I have lots of favorite anime,
Top
right?
3. Go, go, go.
Top three: Inuyasha,
Ooh,
Dragon Ball Z, Yu
uh-huh.
Yu Hakusho.
Not Full Metal Alchemist?
Yeah. God, okay. There's four.
Top 4.
Full Metal Alchemist has to be number one.
It's a really good one.
Yeah.
Um, Mine always changes. I still love Fully Cooley. I love Dorohedoro. I love, Slayers. I do like Full Metal Alchemist a lot. Chainsaw Man's really good, which if you haven't watched it, please do.
So my stepson has a queue of anime he is insisting I watch. Chainsaw Man,
Yes.
uh,
He's smart.
One Piece, which I mean,
No,
I'm going to watch One Piece for the rest
don't
of my life
don't do
because
it.
there's
It's a
thousands of
trap.
episodes.
It's a trap. Don't do it at all.
In Jujutsu Kaisen or whatever it is,
That one's alright. I've watched it. I've watched it.
wants me to watch that one. So I was like, I can't watch all this anime. I mean, plus I have live action shows I'm trying to watch. Right?
Nah,
There's all that the Shogun on Hulu. I'm already an episode behind right now. Tokyo Vice, which
haven't watched any of
I'm
those.
current on that, and I still got the latest season of Yellowstone. I'm trying to catch up with. How did we get on TV from VMware? How did that happen?
Well, it was a magical journey that we went on, and this is the, organic conclusion is that we talk about anime
Yeah, I
because
mean,
it's a
it's
part of
like
information security, like, you have to like cats, you have to like anime,
that's what.
um
Yeah, information security evolves into anime and cats, just like life evolves into crabs at some point. Nature keeps
crab.
creating crabs. Yeah, you haven't seen that?
No. Is
Yeah,
this like
nature
turtles all
keeps
the way down or crabs in a bucket, or is it different?
no nature. A lot of things have evolved over time, and they keep becoming crabs, and they don't know what the deal is with this. Yeah,
So, the last episode we did, I was talking about a conspiracy theory. I feel like this is a conspiracy theory. I don't know about this show.
but no, go research it.
I'm gonna make a VMware crab image just
There
for
you go.
this.
Go all the AI generators we have, and Stacy is going to convert it to a meme generator.
VMware is crabs. But have you heard the term crabs in a bucket? And because I do feel like it can be applicable to certain circumstances
I
like
don't think I'm
this.
familiar with it.
So the concept is that if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, what they will do is they will not let any other crab leave.
Oh yeah,
They will pull the other crabs down. They're like, nah, if I'm going to die, you're going to die too. And I feel like that's what organizations are doing. They're like, if we can't have your money, we're just going to keep pulling you down. You get back in the bucket. So yeah,
maybe
maybe everything is crabs.
could be, could be. I'm telling you though, it's a thing.
Enjoy your bucket and have a good day.
Is that how we're ending this?
I think so.
Crabs in a bucket? Okay, we're
Crabs
all
in a
crabs in a
bucket.
bucket.
We
Contemplate that one till our next episode.
we did it. All right, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to stop the recording. And we're going to give it a 1 and a 2 and a